Hello, Mzansi. You are listening to Farmers Inside Track, proudly brought to you by Food for Mzansi. Officially, this is the world's best podcast for 2024, as awarded by One IFRA, the global organization for the world's press. I'm your host, Duncan Masua, and welcome to episode 456, powered by SANSOR. Now, in this episode, we sit down with Lukeshni Chetty, General Manager of the South African National Seed Organization, also known as SANSOR. And together we explore the intricate journey of seed development and the critical role it plays in agriculture. We discover the vital importance of research and development in the seed industry and why it takes years of dedicated effort to bring in a new seed variety to the market. Lukeshni breaks down the process of cultivar trials and their contribution to ensuring quality and performance of new seeds, followed by a deep dive into the seed production process from the initial breeding phase to a large-scale production. That, of course, and much more. Lukeshni, lovely having you with us. Welcome to Farmers Inside Track.
Hi, Duncan. Thank you for having me here again, and I'm excited to talk about that.
I've definitely been enjoying getting to better understand South Africa's seed industry, complexities around it, how it works when it comes to taking into consideration farmers, but as well as consumers at the end of the day who consume the food that farmers produce. But for this specific episode, let's maybe start the conversation here. What is the role of research and development in the seed industry? And why is it crucial before seeds reach the market?
Your first question is so important, and research and development is absolutely critical. Today, it's very formalized. But 100 years ago, 200 years ago, research and development was still occurring for seed. And that's how we're able to take wild types and domesticate them into the crops you and I eat today without giving a single thought to how it has become our food or appears in our supermarkets. And I think people don't often realize that there's an entire value chain before the seed reaches the farmer. And that one, the biggest one, is the research and development. So, for example, in order for us as the industry to be able to provide a crop that is tasty, pleasant to look at, easy to cook, readily available, we have a number of scientists that have to go to produce that particular seed to produce that crop. So you would need a breeder. The breeder would have to identify various cultivars, how he would source genetic material, where he would source it from, what would be the key markers of the cultivars that he would want to utilize to make a new variety. So you'd need a breeder, he would have to identify the material, then he would have to plant it out, cross it, be it through a hand pollination or some other type of molecular breeding, and he would, hypothetically, if he were breeding for some sort of disease resistance, he would need a plant pathologist, or you'd have a plant pathologist who's also trained as a breeder. You'd need a soil scientist, an agronomist, data scientists. It's a multidisciplinary number of scientists that you need in order to do this research and development before the seed can even pass into a commercial space.
You could have knocked me over with a feather when I learned that it can take up to 15, 20 years before a seed actually reaches the market.
We often forget that you have to plant right till the flowering stage of the plant so that you can have pollen to do a cross-pollination. And that takes time. And then you have to perfect and get the right cultivar you want. Once you have done that, then you trial it out, you have to test it. Then the varieties have to go through the legislative procedures because you can't just sell anything that you find unique. It has to pass through the requirements that government has set in place, which are also really important. And that can take some time. And then only are you able to sell it to a farmer.
It's a lengthy process, but quite necessary if you look at it at the end of the day. Let's maybe go into cultivar trials. What are cultivar trials? and how do they contribute to ensuring the quality and performance of new seed varieties?
So, Duncan, once you've developed a variety, and often the seed companies will develop several varieties, they will have an ongoing breeding program to bring you those varieties. Part of a cultivar trial or cultivar evaluation trial would be to present these varieties for some kind of assessment. So you'd want to understand, how do they actually perform? And which of these cultivars suit which farmer? Different farmers have different markets, they have different soil types, they have different climatic regions that they would plant in. You might also get a farmer that might be planting in a much smaller space, some in larger spaces. So these cultivar trials is for the company as well as for the farmer to be able to evaluate the needs and to showcase cultivar. It's like going into an appliance store and you have all the TVs on display. So you can choose which TV will fit your space and which one will match you. Similarly, we do a cultivar trial.
Lukeshni, I've also heard about seed multiplication. Now, I'm quite new to all of this, so I'm learning as we go. What is seed multiplication? Why would you say is it so an essential step in the seed supply chain?
So once you've bred a variety, you've identified the ones that you would like to commercialize, you go through the legislative procedure, you have to have the seed ready for sale. And in order to have sufficient seed ready to sell to all farmers, you need to multiply it. So part of the multiplication process, we also have a seed certification process. So you can go through a certification process with multiplying the seed, but multiplying is basically just bulking up, making sure that we go into a seed production, producing enough seed so that we have availability. When I mention this, I must also mention that not everything can happen in the same country. And that's really important to note. So we could have a breeding program in the Netherlands and a cultivar trials in the Netherlands, for example, for some other veg crop, and you might do your multiplications in South Africa. And that would speak to ideal climates. I think also people mistake the fact that you want to produce the vegetable versus producing the seed. Those are two different stages in the plant. So the multiplication and the development and the trialing can all happen in different parts of the world. And the multiplication is just really important to have sufficient seed to sell all over the world, actually.
It's quite interesting. I'm just thinking now as well, as we talk, how does it work with indigenous seeds and crops when it comes to seed multiplication? Is it a similar process, or is that sort of a different protocol altogether that you see with indigenous crops?
That's a really good question. So some of the time, some of the indigenous crops are self-pollinated. So you can save some of your grain and reuse that for seed. That happens even in a commercial space. It's called farm-saved seed. The challenges with that is you do not go into a formalized multiplication process, and you're unable to provide seed that adheres to high quality standards because it's technically a grain you produced for grain and you just kept some of that back. A lot of the indigenous seed systems might follow that route. Let's say, for example, Bambara might. In a formalized system here in South Africa, there are farmers who hold back wheat seed or soybean seed. And our legislative framework does allow farmers to retain their seed and plant it out as long as it is for their own use. But sometimes that might have an impact on quality and a spread of diseases, and it could be challenging because you can't always guarantee a good crop at the end.
What about seed treatments? What is that, and how do they benefit farmers and the agricultural industry?
So seed treatments, it's exactly that, Duncan. You apply something to the seed for a specific purpose. It could be a fungicide that would help the seed germinate in specific environments. And this just makes sure It's additional to the seed, so it doesn't necessarily follow the same route that you would have for breeding. So it has a different stream of research and development, and then a match is made per crop type. And this just is to help the seed germinate and help ensure a good yield at the end. I think they are critical, especially for some crop types. And I think it's also important when you import and export seed, because it provides an additional measure of protection for that seed. And if you're, let's say, exporting to a particular country and they might have some measures in place, a treatment could add value in that we could say does not have this bacteria on it or this fungus on it. It has a fungicide instead on it, if that gives you some clarity there, Duncan.
Definitely. It sounds to me that the seed supply chain is quite big. And a part of that is the marketing side of it. How is seed marketed in South Africa, and what strategies are used to demonstrate the value of quality seed?
That's a good question. And in South Africa, seed is marketed actually under the Plant Improvement Act. And right after you have developed your cultivar, that legislative process I mentioned, that sort of kicks in to support the marketing. So once you've developed a variety, you're satisfied that this is going to offer something great to the farmers, you go into a variety release application. And that application is managed under the Plant Improvement Act. And basically what that says is once the government assesses it according to international guidelines and they put it on their variety list, then only can that particular variety be marketed. This is protection also for farmers. And this way, the farmers can safely buy seed knowing that it has gone through these assessments and the government has authorized it and it is on that variety list and they are good to go. And they're not going to buy something that's going to appear differently in their field. So that's the first stage of being able to market seed. And then the Act will go on to say what should be on a bag, the kind of information. It has gone under a certification process, what that labeling would look like. And so when a farmer goes to buy that seed, he gets a bag with all the information pertaining to that cultivar, which protects him as well as the seed company. And the government has ensured that in your food production line, that farmers are getting good quality seed.
Lukeshni, as a consumer myself, I was quite impressed to hear how rigorous the process is when it comes to ensuring quality seeds before it actually reaches the market for the farmer. And then, of course, at the end, the consumer who consumes the produce. We can definitely be sure that when it comes to our seed industry, quality is at the core of what we do. Another thing that excites me is the career opportunities that come with it. We talk about an entire seed supply chain. Talk to us a bit about that. What career opportunities are available for young graduates in the seed industry?
How long is this podcast, Duncan? Because I could go on for days on this. I'm really passionate about careers in the industry and young people. And I think for far too long, perhaps the seed industry has been forgotten in the agricultural value chain. But there are so many opportunities for all personality types and all backgrounds. And, I just mentioned a few. In the early part of our conversation, I mentioned a breeder, a plant pathologist, an agronomist, a soil scientist, a data scientist. This is just the science part of the careers that are required. And these careers can either be very field-based, so it depends. Would you like being outdoors in the hot sun, walking in fields, planting them, looking at plants all the time? Then this would really suit your personality. But the way science has evolved today, you could do so much of that in a lab. Science is evolving on a daily basis, Duncan, and in other industries as well, you will see it. So you could do this molecular breeding that could occur in a lab. You have biotechnologists. I think after we produce the seed, we need seed analysts. That's part of the quality assurance standards we have in place. In a commercial space, we have product managers, people who would lead on particular crops that would eventually want to expand out of the country. So there's many opportunities in a science-based direction that would have to work with each other, as well as a science and a specific agricultural interface. I wish more and more young people chose the seed industry as an opportunity. I think it's an incredibly noble profession to be able to contribute to the starting point of our food.
Thank you, Lukeshni Chetty, General Manager of the South African National Seed Organization. You can, of course, read more on this topic by visiting www.foodformzansi.co.za. And that's a wrap. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. But from me, Duncan Masiwa, our technical producer, Megan van der Vent, and as well as the rest of #Team Food for Mzansi, as always, thanks for listening.